So if you're thinking about starting a fishing charter business, or maybe you already have one, then this video is going to be helpful for you because I'm going to walk you through the exact roadmap that I used to become a full-time fishing guide. That way, hopefully, you don't make the same mistakes that I did. Okay, now I'm going to jump over to my computer real quick and I'll show you exactly what I mean. All right, so let's get into it. And step one, beginners start here. And this is where you're in your learning phase, okay? And if you're already a little bit further along in your journey, then you might not necessarily need this step, but I'm pretending that we're just starting at ground zero and like you have no fishing experience whatsoever. Now, I say learn for 1,000 hours, okay? And that doesn't necessarily mean it's set in stone. There's no real data that I have to back that up. I just think that 1,000 hours is an appropriate amount of time for you to go from zero to learning the skill of fishing enough that you could probably teach it to other people and get paid to do it. And really, if you think about it, 1,000 hours might seem like a lot, but all it is what, 200 5-hour trips? Yeah. So you go fishing for 5 hours, say, that's like a half day, and you do it 200 times. So like essentially you could get it all done in a year, or you could drag it out over a couple years if you wanted, or whatever. But that's just kind of like what's required for you to like understand everything. And yeah, there's something to be said. I mean, you can't start a fishing charter business with no experience. So you have to get the experience out of the way at some point. And like I said, maybe you already have this box checked. If you do, then that's great. If not, you gotta learn. So there's no way to get around it. Now, step two is teaching people for free. And essentially, what I mean by that is once you think you're good enough, and that might be you right now, you might have been fishing for a super long time already, and you might be like, all right, like I'm wanting to get into the fishing charter game and stuff, but like not really sure like what to do or if I want to get my captain's license and stuff yet. What I would recommend doing, and I'm not just saying this, I actually did this myself, is find some people to just take out for free. And trust me, you're the one who's getting the better end of the deal here because you might look at it as like, oh, like, you know, my time is worth something and I'm not going to give it away for free. But like, trust me on this, you're getting the better end of the deal because you're getting to learn. And with all of that experience, that could potentially save you so much wasted time and money down the road if it ends up not being for you. And even if it is for you, it still gives you way more skills without the pressure of people all of a sudden paying you if you just all of a sudden opened your business. So what I mean by that is don't take out family members and people that you know really well, you know, close friends and stuff, because, well, you can take them out if you want, but not for this specific thing that I'm talking about here. For these people, I'm saying take out some people that you might barely kind of know. Like you might not even really think that you know them that well. Like for me, it was, I was going through this phase when I was still in high school. So I just found some people that like I knew them a little bit, like we had some classes together, but I wasn't necessarily like friends with them. We never hung out like outside of school or anything. And I basically just like asked a few of them and I'm like, hey, do you guys like want to go fishing? Like more or less, that's what I said. I don't remember exactly, but that's basically it. And it wasn't, I didn't take them all on the same day. I took them one by one, so separate trips. And what I found that was really interesting is basically uh, a lot of them didn't have really much fishing experience at all. So they were holding the spinning reel upside down, you know, reeling it backwards. They didn't know how to pump the rod, like none of that. Whereas like all the people that I fished with before, like, you know, friends and family and stuff, a lot of them like knew a lot about fishing already. So that didn't happen. So then I had this like, I'm like, wow, like this moment, I'm like, wow, these people really don't know anything. And I'll tell you what, that was a perfect precursor for everything else that followed because now years down the road, that's how like 80% of clients that I've taken out on the boat on charters and stuff are. A lot of them need a lot of assistance and teaching and they just don't really like know what they're doing. That's the reason that they hired you. So it's like nothing is wrong with that. It's just you don't necessarily, or I didn't at least, expect that when I was getting into it. But yeah, taking people out for free, seeing if you like it, yeah, it's one of the best things I think you can do early on. And a lot of people get all excited and they skip this step, but definitely would recommend taking people out for free. Now, step 3 is earning your first dollar. And I don't mean this in the sense of like you starting your charter business right now. It can be from things like a tournament. It could be maybe one of these people that you took out for free that you said that you were going to take out for free anyways. Maybe they just kind of felt bad and gave you some gas money anyways, type of thing. For me, my first dollar that I made from fishing was from just a small local like river fishing tournament. It wasn't even on a boat or anything. It was just a shore-based, like a land-based, like carp, catfish, pike type of tournament. And that was how I made money for the first time. And it was I actually got first and third place, so it ended up being like $350 or something like that. So yeah, and then that was to the point where it's like, okay, and the whole goal of this, like the reason I say to earn your first dollar as step 3 for beginners is because that gives you the confidence and the conviction to keep repeating it and to actually like create a business around it. Because just from like winning a tournament or something, it's like, okay, like sure, you could have just randomly got lucky. Like someone could have never fished before and won the tournament. But it gives you that like, oh, like I actually placed in top 3 in this tournament. Or, oh, like somebody actually found my time and my service valuable enough to throw me $50 of gas money. Or like whatever the thing is. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can make your first dollar from fishing. It's not just limited to those two. That's just what I can think of. But like I said, the point of it is to build your confidence and conviction so that when you actually are getting the business started, you don't feel like an imposter or like you're not good enough, which is a whole another topic for another day. But once you finish step 3 for beginners, then you can jump over to the intermediate section, which is where we move now from the starting phase to the building phase. And this is where you're actually like starting to lay the blocks of your fishing charter business. And step 1 for the build phase is finding your thing. So what that means is, and I'll show you, I have a good little like diagram that I found. I didn't come up with this. This exists on the internet. You can look it up, but it's called Ikigai or Ikigai, however you want to say it. But this is basically like just a good way to like get perspective on like finding your thing. And in the sense that I'm using it, I mean like what service are you going to give people? So, you know, you can start out and say like, oh yeah, I'm opening a fishing charter business, you know, like I'm a charter captain, all these things. It's like great, but like what do you actually like, what is your thing? Like, do you want to be the snook guy? Do you want to be the bass guy? Do you want to be the swordfish guy? Do you want to be the shark guy? Do you want to be the, you know, panfish guy? Like what is your theme? Like what are you trying to do? And this diagram does a really good job at kind of summing it up. And it's basically what you like to do, what people need, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. So like for me, when I was first starting, like before I'd even ran any charters, I was like, all right, my thing, like my confidence is in smallmouth bass fishing on Lake St. Clair. Like that was what I knew. I'm like, I'm so confident. Like every time I go out, I do like really, really good. And yeah, like I was super confident. And that was and still is like literally still to this day, my favorite kind of fishing of all time is smallmouth bass fishing. So I clearly loved it and I clearly felt that I was good at it. So then the question became what you can be paid for and what people need. So could I be paid to take people on guided smallmouth bass fishing trips? Sure, I could. You know, you can basically be paid for essentially any charter. So that's not really that hard of a box to check. But this one is probably, well, this is what I got hung up on and what I would assume other people would get hung up on in this stage is you find what you love and what you're good at. Like you might love a certain species or certain style of fishing and you might be good at it, but is that what people need? Or rather, an even better word instead of need, I would say, is that what people want? Okay, right? Because they're not booking a fishing charter because they need it. It's not food, it's not shelter. They want it. It's fun. So is your service, is what you're offering people going to be what they want? Is the question. And for me, with smallmouth bass, it was like some people wanted it, and to be honest, most of the people that wanted it just kind of didn't care. They were the flexible ones who call, and if if you have a fishing charter business, you know there's those kinds of people who call and they're like, you could basically sell them into any charter. Like they don't really care what you're going fishing for. They just basically want to go fishing. So that was kind of where I was at with that. Like I was taking some people bass fishing and stuff, and we were doing good catching fish. But what I started to realize after I started to get more and more leads was people were calling and then they were asking for stuff that I didn't necessarily do because I was just focused on smallmouth bass. So the only leads that I was closing were people who basically didn't really care what we fished for. And what I started to realize is I'm like, okay, I know what I love, I know what I'm good at, I can be paid for it, but I need to focus on what people want. And for me, that was salmon and trout. Like I was getting so many calls and so many people asking like they wanted salmon and trout because that's kind of like the area like where I live. There's a lot of demand for that. So I kind of had to look at it and I'm like, all right, well, I didn't plan on being the salmon and trout guy. But I guess if I want to be able to capture and grow the business and stuff and capture these leads, I'm kind of going to have to learn that. And I wasn't starting from scratch. I already knew a lot about salmon and trout fishing and stuff, but I basically had to, I wouldn't say pivot, but I had to add on this new appendage or like tree branch to my business. Whereas when I started, I'm like, hey, I'm just smallmouth bass fishing. But I had to be like, okay, I need to kind of learn this other stuff so I can do it. So I don't want to beat a dead horse too much on that. I feel like I'm going off on a tangent now. But my whole point in saying that is understand that the market wants what the market wants. And sometimes you might think in your head just because you know how to do a certain kind of fishing or you like to do a certain kind of fishing or whatever, that just means that people are going to like flock to you like crazy. And they might if that happens to be what they want, but you just have to pay attention and listen to people. And based on your area of where you're located, you probably already know what most people are going to want to fish for. So just early on, like that's why I'm putting this in step one of building is you need to just understand what you like to do. Because if people really want to go mackerel fishing, but you suck at it and you hate it, then I would not recommend doing that because you're going to burn out and it's not going to be good. You won't be able to do it for very long. So you have to find something that you like doing, you're good enough at it, and that people want to do that with you. That is like the whole foundation of finding your thing. Okay, so now let's go back up here. Step 2, the startup process. And this is like probably the most painful part of, well, I don't want to say that because some of this other stuff later on can be pretty painful, but this is like where a lot of people get hung up for a really, really long time is like the startup, because this is the part where you are going to need to pick out your boat. If you're doing boat trips, which I guess I actually know lots of people who do shore trips and land-based trips and stuff. So if that's you, then you don't have to pick out a boat, or maybe you already have a boat. Which, let me just say this about boats. A lot of people that I talk to and that I help with their charter businesses and stuff, they say like that they think they have to have this multi-six-figure boat, this like just beautiful, like just absolute machine of a watercraft. And I always say like, you don't need that, and you should only run that if that's what you want. Now, don't get me wrong, like, if your niche, so to speak, is you do sword fishing trips in the Gulf of Mexico, then you probably aren't going to want to have a 14-foot John boat. You know what I mean? So there's a certain level to get the job done. But for example, I'll just use myself. So a lot of what I do is on Lake St. Clair. And it's a lot of like river system, shallow water. I mean, it's it's not like we're out in the ocean or something, okay? And like I have a 17-foot, call it, just under Lund Alaskan, and it's perfect for what I do with it. And a lot of people would look at that, and I've even questioned myself, like early on. I'm like, man, like, is this boat adequate enough for what I want to do with it? Or like, are people, it wasn't even that, it was more so that I was afraid people were going to look at it and be like, oh, like, this guy's a charter captain. Like, why doesn't he have, this big, expensive, fancy fiberglass, shiny boat? And I kind of just had to come to terms with myself that I'm like, I don't think people care that much. I think I'm creating this problem in my head that doesn't really exist. And I'm like, all right, the only way to figure out is to test it. So, of all the years that I've been doing charters, I never once have had a person complain to me that the boat was too small, that, what, like they've never complained about my boat at all. So, basically, what that did is it allowed me to keep a boat that I was already had paid off and that I liked for myself. Like when I don't want to go down this whole story, but like when I bought that boat when I was 16, it was my dream boat. I bought it brand new, and it was like I couldn't believe it. Like that was everything that I dreamed about for like years leading up to that. So that was the boat I wanted. The only reason I was considering switching was because I felt like it wasn't good enough for my clients. And you could make the argument where, okay, if I would have got a bigger boat, I could have brought more people out and that could have offset the cost and stuff, but sure. But what a lot of people don't realize is they think they need to make this massive upgrade, and then really all they end up with is boat payments every month. And then more expenses means you have to run more trips to cover it, and it's just, you can get in a downward spiral really quick with it. Whereas, put it this way, I'm going to end it here, not the whole video, but this step, and say that if I've never seen an instance where just the boat alone has booked me or anyone that I know or have worked with a trip. Like, just because you have a shiny boat, people aren't going to book you. Okay, there's a lot of other things that go into it. So don't spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of extra dollars than you need to be getting started up. Okay, you don't need a bunch of crazy stuff. Yeah, you don't need a bunch of crazy gear. Okay, and now that's just like the equipment side of stuff. But we also have insurance. We also have, which that's a big one. A lot of people get hung up on insurance. We also have inspections, which this is going to vary from state to state, but we've got the DNR dry dock. We've got the DNR dockside. We've got a bunch of other little things that we have to do in Michigan. And I'm sure, like I said, depending on your state or country, it's going to vary. And we also have the captain's license, right? Like anywhere that I'm aware of in the United States, if you're taking passengers for hire, you're going to have this thing out on the water. And there's so many little things that go into it. You've got the drug test, you've got the TWIC card, you've got all this stuff. So much goes into the startup process. You're going to spend a lot of time here, and it might literally be a year that you might spend here. I was able to get through the entire thing in like under 6 months. Yeah, I was able to get through this entire thing in under 6 months. Like starting my C school course all the way through to like captain's license delivered in the mail was about 6 months for me. And I feel like I did it as fast as possible. So yeah, just to give you like a rough timeline of what to expect. Now the other thing that I just want to touch on real quick is insurance. And insurance, the reason it was so hard for me is because no one wanted to insure an 18-year-old kid who didn't have any history of running charters or anything. And it seemed like a huge liability risk to them, as I can understand now, to be doing this. And I don't blame them, honestly, but it just made things really difficult for me. So I guess to put it this way, if I was able to get insured in that situation, then you can too. Okay. And all it took was me calling a lot of different places and finding one that was willing to do it. And it was a lot more expensive since I was viewed as a riskier client for them. But it was fine. I was able to get it done, and it was what it was. So if you get stuck in the insurance thing, I would say just don't get like too married to like trying to go through the same people that you get your car insurance from or your house insurance or something like that, because for one, it might not even be adequate. That's one thing that I see happen a lot, is when you don't go through an actual commercial marine insurance company. uh, they don't necessarily always know what they're doing with that stuff. So if possible, I would recommend going through a place that specializes in charter insurance or like marine, like maritime commercial insurance. That is a really, really big one to keep in mind there. Now, moving on from the startup, because we could go down so many rabbit holes with that, but just know it's going to take a little bit of time. There's going to be some paperwork, and it's probably going to suck. Like, I'm just going to be honest with you. The startup process is probably going to suck. And I don't want to make it sound worse than it is. It's mostly just you have to wait to hear back from a lot of people, and it's just this whole thing. But it's not terrible, I guess. So now step 3, once you're out of the startup jungle, it's time to craft your offer. And when I say craft your offer, essentially I mean things like guarantees, pricing. Like, this is where you start to get into the nuts and bolts of actually building your business. And the thing about offers is a lot of times people, like, they hear the word offers when I'm trying to explain it, and their brain just kind of like freezes up. But all an offer is what someone's trading you their hard-earned dollars for in exchange for what you're giving them. So it would be like if I said, hey, I'll give you this sparkling water for $1. Like, that is my offer. My offer is I will give you this in exchange for your money. So it's really no different than you saying that with fishing. But it just doesn't sound as good to be like, hey, I'll take you fishing for X amount of dollars. So the whole thing is we're trying to dress this up so that your offer isn't just, I'll take you fishing. It should be a little bit more fine-tuned than that. So just to give you some examples on some of this stuff, you know what, actually, when it comes to offers, there's a lot to it. So if you want to see exactly how I recommend building your offer, I'll put a link in the description down below this video. You can click on that link and it'll take you to my website, where I have like a whole video for completely for free. You can watch it and it'll show you exactly what kind of guarantees I like to make, how I like to price my service, because that's a big one. People are always mispriced. Well, I shouldn't say always, but a lot of times they are mispriced, and some other things. So if you want to either fine-tune your current offer or learn how to build your first offer for your fishing charter business, like I said, link in the description below. But other than that, I want to show you this funny little meme here, I guess you could call it, of what I think a lot of people, or a lot of new captains, view the marketplace as. And I think they just, like, I'll just read it for you here, and you can read it for yourself and you can see what I mean. But the person in the suit and tie is the new captain, and then the person in the red shirt is the theoretical customer. And these new captains come in, you know, they get their captain's license, they got their new shiny boat, and they think that this is what people are thinking. They think their customer is just like, wow, I have way too much money. What am I going to do with all this money? It's literally falling out of my pockets. Won't somebody please take some of this money? And yeah, then the new captain says, so anyway, that's how I imagine our target audience. And let me just tell you from experience that that's not how it works. People aren't just, money's not falling out of people's pockets and they just don't have anywhere else to put it, so they have to give it to you. Like, that's not how it goes. So you have to, like I said earlier, you have to actually have a good offer, craft your offer, so it's actually good and actually makes sense for people to want to buy it. Okay, so before we move on to the next one, let me just make sure that I touched on everything. And I think I did. So once you get through these three steps, you kind of have your foundation built. Uh, and it's time for you to scale that essentially. So then we move over here into the advanced section. And I know advanced sounds like all scary and stuff, but it's not. It just means like at this point, when you're entering into the advanced stage, you should already have your captain's license and all of your insurance and your boat, and you should have all the legal side of stuff done. And you should essentially be ready to just scale. That's why this section is called scaling. And the very first step, like, and this is where I would assume maybe some of you watching this video right now might be at, is you might have already went through the whole beginner phase when you were a kid, basically. You might have been building your fishing charter business for a while, but you might kind of be stuck at scaling. And step one of scaling is you probably just need leads. Like, if you're stuck and you can't grow your business, your fishing charter business, then you probably just need more leads. And you need to find a reliable source to get leads from. And you might be like, oh, well, that would be amazing. That sounds a lot easier said than done. What do you know about that? And what I'll say is I've tried a lot, and I mean a lot of different ways of getting leads. And I've wasted a ton of money on it over time, and I've lost a lot of money. I've hired advertising agencies that I've lost a lot of money to that were basically as close as you can get to a scam without actually being a scam. And I've tried stuff on my own. I've tried running my own Google ads, my own Facebook ads. I've tried doing every social media trick in the book. I've tried sending out postcards. And when I say I tried these things, I don't mean like, oh, I tried sending out postcards and, I sent 100 of them out and it didn't work. No, I mean, I sent out 10,000 postcards and it didn't work well enough for me to want to do it again. Because what is the measuring stick on didn't work? Like, sure, you can say it might have raised brand awareness, it might have done this, it might have done that, might have resulted in more bookings later. But all I know is when I sent those postcards out, within about a week of after they were delivered, I'd only booked 3 trips, which was like just over like $1,000 in actual like profit by the end of it all. And I had spent like almost $3,000 on just postage and postcards and stuff to send the stuff out. So I was operating at a loss, which meant I didn't really want to do it again, obviously. Just basic business there. But my point is you don't have to do any of this stuff that I've said, or like that might work amazing for you. Like your thing might be, you might crack the code your first try on postcards, and that might be your acquisition channel, your customer acquisition channel. And that's great. But my point that I'm trying to make when you're trying to find your reliable way to get leads, it's not the reliable way, it's not a reliable way, it's your reliable way, is you just have to keep trying different stuff and seeing what you might get lucky and find an agency that just sends you a crazy amount of customers. You might, there's all these things that you can do. So for me, yeah, I did all those things. I ran magazine ads. I sponsored local events, blah, 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 blah. I could go on about all the stuff that I tried and didn't work. And then I finally had some breakthroughs where I found a couple things that worked really good, and it paid for all of my mistakes. So like that's the thing here too, is once you find a really good lead getting strategy for your charter business, you could, like, just to put this into perspective, for my whole first entire year of running charters, okay? Well, season. I have an 8-month season here in Michigan. That whole first season, I ran like 11 trips, and I spent probably close to 10 grand in advertising. So I was way in the hole. And then all it took was in 2 weeks at the end of that season, I found a new way and I booked 43 trips in 2 weeks. Not ran them, but I mean, I got them like scheduled on the books for the coming months. And then a couple months after that, I did another strategy that ended up getting me like, ever since then, like hundreds and hundreds of leads. So my point is you can make all these mistakes and it sucks at first, but all it takes is one thing that you do right or that works for you, and then all of a sudden that becomes your thing. And then it pays for all of the wasted money that you've wasted. I don't even like to say wasted, but it was just kind of your learning budget. All right. It was like what was required for you to learn that doesn't work for you. So you might be wondering, well, what was that thing that worked so well for you? For me, it was, well, the first big breakthrough I had was giveaways, which you might have heard me talk about that before, which that's a whole another separate topic. I'm not going to get into exactly how I do giveaways right now. And the other thing was drive-by signs, like banners and signs and stuff like that. Those were like my two big lead-getting breakthroughs. Now, you might not be able to do those things, or you might. But one thing I'll leave you with here for the lead-getting part is play to your advantage. So everyone has an advantage, okay? And when it comes to getting leads, your advantage might be, you might be sitting there right now and you might have 6,000 followers on Facebook that you just haven't been monetizing properly. You might be sitting there right now and you might be really good friends with somebody that owns a bait shop that you could do some sort of partnership with. You might be really good friends with a charter captain who's retiring, who could send you some of his overflow clients or send you his like basically entire client list if he's not doing it anymore. Like there's all these things that are possibilities and you just have to play to your advantage. That's what I did, is I played to my advantage. And that's why I say, like, in your area you might not be able to put up signs, and that's fine, but in my area I was, so I did it and it worked. So just whatever your thing is, you got to find it, and the only way to find it is to keep trying. I know that that's not the answer you probably want to hear, but you just have to keep iterating and iterating and iterating, and eventually, if you do it enough times, I promise you will find something that works. So now, once you're getting leads sustainably, and there isn't one way, like, or there isn't a number that's like, oh yeah, that's enough leads. Like, I'm not saying like, that's why you don't hear me say like, oh, once you hit 100 leads every 6 months, that's when you move to step 2. Or once you hit 10 phone calls a week, that's when you move to, step whatever. Like, step 2 is mastering sales. And mastering sales, you pretty much never completely do it, but you just have to start learning it. And the only way to learn it is to be getting on the phone with people, having conversations. And the only way to do that is by getting leads. So I was learning how to get good at sales when I was getting 1 call a week, the same as I was like yesterday. I got 3 calls a week. A couple days before, or 3 calls a week. Yesterday I got 3 calls. A couple days before that I got 5 calls in one day. So I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying, like, you can get so many more reps in for these sales things, because like, if you fumble the ball and you're like, I said that thing a little bit wrong, I shouldn't have really said it like that or whatever, then like, I only have to wait a few more hours for the phone to ring and I can try again. Versus when I was earlier in the days, like when I'd fumble the ball and be like, oh, I lost that sale, like I'm gonna have to wait like another week for the phone to ring. And like that was a lot. It takes you longer to like learn the stuff, but the whole point is that you're just learning it. And that's really all it boils down to. But I'd say the 2 things when it comes to sales, and this is probably one of like the biggest levers that you can pull in your business. Like, and if you're watching this video before you've actually ever ran a charter, then like you're going to be so much farther ahead of everyone else. Because if you have already been running charters for a while now, then you know that if you could close every single lead, if every time your phone rang it resulted in a booked trip, you'd need a lot less leads. So my kind of rule of thumb is I like to close about 1 out of 3 people that call. And so between 30 and 40%, that's kind of like just my rough benchmark. It could vary for you, but for me, that's pretty comfortable, because if it's higher than that, like if I'm closing more than 50% of people that call me, like if 10 people call me and 7 of them book a trip, like that's telling me that I probably would need to raise the price. The price is probably too low. You need to add a little more friction because you're actually getting too many conversions. Whereas on the other side, if you're not getting enough, very rarely would price be the reason that you're not getting enough conversions. It's probably just because you need to become a better salesman. And people get so worked up about salesmanship, and they're like, you just, your mind instantly goes, and mine did too. So I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I always think of like, oh, it's going to be like a slimy car salesman. Like, it's going to be so yucky. Like, that's the best way that I can uh, describe it, is I just thought that it was going to be just this awful, awful thing that I was going to have to do, like being salesy. And it turns out it's not. And I did start out that way, and trust me, it was so cringy. It was so cringy. Like, I'd go on YouTube, I'd watch these hardcore sales videos, and then I'd basically like repeat it. And yeah, it was embarrassing. I wish I had some of that call footage to listen back on now, because that would be really, really funny. But it's really just about finding your style. So some of you might be a little bit more aggressive, and you might be able to do that. Some of you might be a little bit more timid, and it might, you might not want to be pushy, but you don't have to be pushy. That's the thing about sales that everyone kind of gets wrong, is it's all about finding your style. And I'll leave you with one thing on sales here, which is, if there's one actionable takeaway that you could take away from this sales, the whole last few minutes that I've been blabbling on, it's follow-ups. That was the biggest unlock I had. Like, it's not, oh, like, all you gotta do is say this one sentence and it's gonna somehow like make this chemical imbalance in their head that's just gonna like magically get them to say yes. Like, that's not what sales is about. And it's more about, like I said, finding your style and then following up. Okay, that is the biggest thing in sales, is following up. When you get a lead, when someone calls you, be yourself. Don't be pushy if you don't want to be. Just do exactly however you naturally want to do it. But if they don't buy from you, or if they don't book a trip, always, 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 always follow up. So when I say follow up, I know that's kind of general. Like, it could be taken some different ways. So what I mean by that is, say someone calls me, happens all the time, and they're like, all right, well, let me check with my girlfriend, and we'll see if we can make it work. And a lot of people, they just be like, all right, man, let me know, and then that'd be it. But what I would normally do is I'd be like, okay, cool. Do you think you can have an answer for me tonight? And I put that time frame on it. I say, do you think you can have an answer for me tonight? And they'll say one of two things. It'll be yes or no. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, for sure, I'll know by tonight. And then that allows me to slide my foot in the door, or keep my foot in the door rather, and be like, all right, cool. Well, I'll look forward to hearing from you sometime tonight then. And then guess what? Tomorrow morning rolls around, haven't heard from them, big shocker, like normal. And then you reach back out to them and you just say, hey man, did you get a chance to talk to your girlfriend yet about whether it's a green or red light? Can you guys go or not? Or like, whatever. You don't have to say exactly that. But the point is he's not going to be mad at you for reaching back out the next morning, because you held him accountable by saying, will you have an answer for me by tonight? And he didn't get back to you. Or they might get back to you, which then it's a win-win. But where follow-ups get weird is if you're giving like unsolicited follow-ups, or like without people's permission. Like, and just to be clear, if someone says no, if like whatever the thing is, and they say, all right, look, no, I'm not interested in booking a charter, don't follow up anymore, because all you're going to do is be damaging your reputation. I'm not saying to do that. All I'm saying is, if they're wishy-washy, on the fence, they got to ask their girlfriend, they got to ask their wife, they got to think about it, like whatever their objection is, you just say, you put a timeline on it, whether it's by tonight, by tomorrow morning, by next week, put a reminder on your calendar, whatever it is, and it gives you permission to check in with them again in the future. And I cannot tell you how many trips I've booked from literally just following up with people like this, like a ton, and it costs nothing, and it basically takes no time, like a couple extra minutes to go from, I'm talking like closing 20% of my leads to probably almost doubling it. Like Literally think of that. Think of the amount of calls that you're getting now. Think of how many of them you're closing. And then think of doing double that. Okay, like that's what I'm talking. That's why follow-ups are like a huge, huge thing to do for sales. And I know if some of you are still beginners back here, the stuff I'm talking about now might be a little bit more higher level, like a little bit more. I don't want to say above your head because that sounds like wrong. But if you can't fully comprehend it right now, then just come back to this video later and digest it when your brain is ready, I guess. But for some of you that have been in it for a while, then this might make a little bit more sense. So that's about all I have to say on step 2. But the final step of scaling is optimizing delivery. And I know that's kind of like a loaded term, like optimizing delivery. All that means is, because now let's just run through a little quick recap, okay? You went from 0, whether you were here when you were 7 years old or when you were 67 years old. You went through the learning phase of just everything. You went from using the old push button spin cast reels to maybe now you know how to use a bait caster or something. Like you went through this whole learning curve that it takes approximately maybe about 1,000 hours if I had to guess. Now, just to be clear also, I had way more than 1,000 hours when I started, but I think you could get away with this. Now, anyways, then you've taught some people for free. Then you've earned your first dollar in the fishing industry from your skill that you've acquired. Then you started building your business by finding your thing, going through the startup process, crafting your offer, and then you started to scale it. And now you're getting enough leads, whatever that is for you. It could be, and that's the thing too, like enough leads, like what is enough leads? Just depends on you. Maybe your goal is 5 leads a week, maybe it's 50 leads a week. No one's right or wrong here. But you're getting enough leads and you keep improving your sales skills. So once you're here, like you're already so far down in the roadmap, pretty much what I found, one of the last things to do here, and this is what I keep working on every day, is optimizing delivery. And optimizing delivery is where you take all this service that you're now having to provide to people, because all up in here, the problem, you're always trying to solve whatever the problem is. So right here, the problem is your phone just isn't ringing. No one's calling you to even take them fishing. That's the problem. Right here, the problem is your phone's ringing, just no one's giving you money. You can't take them fishing because they're calling and you can't ever close them. Now right here is plenty of people are calling, plenty of people are booking trips. Now what? You're spending 5, 6, 7 days a week out on the water. Maybe you're doing doubles, like whatever your goal is. Now you think, okay, how can I do this better? How can I, if you're in it for the money, how can I make more money per unit of time, increase my hourly rate, whatever it is? How can I save myself time? That's probably the one that I focus on more, is saving myself time, because in the early days you don't realize like how time consuming this actually is when you start to scale up and run like a legit fishing charter business. Is you've got the travel where I would have to drive an hour and 5 minutes one way to the boat launch the boat, blah blah blah, all that stuff, get ready. Then my clients meet me. Then we go on our 4 or 5 hour fishing trip. Then we come in, then we clean the fish. Then I got to go clean all that stuff up and, clean the knife, clean off the board with soap, all that stuff. Then drive an hour and 5 minutes back home. And yeah, that's over 2 hours of just driving. Then you've got the actual fishing. Then you've got all the prep before, you've got all the prep after, you've got the cleanup. There's all this stuff into it. And what you can start to do is find these little nuggets to optimize. And you can think like, okay, I'm spending 40 hours a week running 8 trips. How can I run 8 trips but only spend 30 hours a week? And you start to go through, and it might take you actually writing it out where you're spending time, and you're like, man, I'm spending, 3 hours a week just cleaning up from cleaning fish, like just the after cleanup from filleting fish for my customers. What if I, what if I just got another cutting board? Or what if I got 2 more cutting boards and I just batched I just left them dirty for a couple days and just batched my cleaning all at once. Like there's all these different little ways that you could, depending on your situation, save yourself time. And or what if instead of driving 2 hours round trip to the boat launch to run one trip, I only ran doubles. So instead of doing say 8 trips a week and or whatever, just to make it simple, say 6 trips a week since there isn't 8 days in a week. If you're doing 6 trips in a week and you're driving there and back 6 different times, well, what if you just batched them together and you did 3 like back and forth drives? So you did doubles 3 days a week, and then you're only driving there and back 3 times. So that saves you 2 hours round trip driving 3 days a week. That's what, 6 or 7 hours a week that you just saved. You're still running the same amount of trips, still making, now you're making more money actually because you're burning less gas from driving down there, and you're saving yourself an extra 7 hours a week. And like that's the little stuff that like if you're not here right now, I sound like a crazy person because it sounds so far-fetched. But once you get to the point where you start to feel like a little bit overwhelmed and stuff, you're going to realize how important this is to start optimizing how you're delivering your services, to make it profitable, to make it so that you're not spending every single waking minute doing it. And then you can kind of scale from there to the point where now I've even brought on some other guides where there's other captains that are running some of the trips for me, so that then I essentially don't have to be out on the water at all for some of the trips, and I just keep scaling and scaling to make the most amount of money per unit of time. And that's something too. Like I'll kind of land the plane right here, and I'll say, and I just kind of noticed this actually from, whoops, what did I click here? I just kind of noticed this from me going through these 9 steps here over the last 45 minutes that I've been talking. And what I've realized is, even thinking back to myself and looking at a lot of different people, you see these beginners, they want to get into the fishing industry because they're like so passionate about fishing. Like they just like, they couldn't imagine doing anything more exhilarating than like being a fishing guide or being a professional tournament fisherman or whatever. And it's all fueled by passion early on. Like you don't even care about money that much. You're like, dude, like when I first started, even for myself, when I got my captain's license and I was getting started, my goal was not to run the amount of trips and get the amount of leads and calls and business. I could have never imagined growing my business to where it's at today. My goal was just to run like 1 trip a month basically to pay for my expenses. Like if I could have a boat and fish for free, I'm like, oh, that's a win. Because before that, I was like working my job, and then going fishing was like this thing that like just literally sucked money out of me. And you know, fishing's not cheap. So I'm like, shoot, if I can just maybe do a handful of trips a year, it'll pay for this hobby. And that was my whole goal with it. But it's all fueled by passion in these early days. And then once you start building and stuff, and you somewhere in here, I'm not sure exactly where, and it probably depends on who you are, you have to start caring about the money at some point, especially when you make the transition to go full time. That's probably actually the biggest pivot, is if you ever make the transition to go full time, that is the pivot point where you'll never look at it the same way ever again. And like, just think about that for a second. You will never look at fishing the same way ever again once you go full time. And I can tell you that as someone who's been there, because you start looking at it through this business lens, profit and loss statements, expense sheets, all this stuff. And that's when you start to get into this optimizing delivery. And that's why if you're over here right now, I sound like a crazy person saying to double batch your trips so that you save 7 hours a week driving, so that you can, you know, outsource your trips so that you can like make a little bit of passive income while you're doing these other trips for the clients that you already have. And like, there's all this stuff, and it sounds like, oh man, there's so many like moving pieces of the puzzle. But like, I'm telling you, once you get towards the end here, business becomes the passion. When you're over here, fishing is the passion. And when you're over here, business is the passion. And that is a really interesting transition that I've found. And there's been times where it's kind of been sad almost, where I'm like, man, like, should I have just always kept fishing a hobby to essentially kind of keep it like, just make sure that it was always, I don't want to say fun because it's still fun, but it's like once you start looking at stuff through that lens of business and when it's your livelihood and that's what pays the bills and stuff, it's just different. It is just different. So I would advise you to be careful with that actually. And if you are a beginner or if you're an intermediate right now, I would say think about what you actually want because the dream might not be going full time. The, the dream for you might be, like I said earlier, running 1 or 2 trips a month just to pay your expenses and you still do whatever else you do, whether it's your job or other businesses and stuff, and you just keep fishing your fun thing. And you can do that and you totally don't have to feel guilty about that at all. When you become a charter captain, it isn't a game to see who can run the most trips and who can become the most successful. It's you just do it for yourself. So whatever that is for you. But I would just say if right now in your head your goal is to go full time and you're like that's all I want to do is go full time, then I can say just be prepared to never look at fishing the same way again. But I don't say that to scare you. I just say it like honestly as someone who's been through it and stuff before. And trust me, like looking back at it now, I don't say that I wish I wouldn't have done those things. I'm glad I've done everything that I've done because it's gotten me to where I am today. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go back in time and not do it. I'm just saying it's interesting how things evolve over time. So, yeah, think about it.